Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to today's joint webinar between PointBeyond and Axceler. My name is Juliet Strong from Axceler, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Axceler partner PointBeyond, who are the UK's leading SharePoint business application specialist. Today's session will last approximately an hour, and during that time we will have around 45 minutes of presentation time, followed by a question and answer session at the end. Today's agenda: first of all, we'd like to give you an introduction to Axceler and PointBeyond. We will then be talking about an example solution for how you can make Customer Extranets easy within your organisation. We'll also be giving you a short demonstration on some of the features and functionalities that might exist within that solution. We'll be talking to you about the range of many benefits that your organisation can enjoy from a Customer Extranet solution, and as I said, we'll be finishing with some questions and answers at the end of the session. If at any stage during today's event you need any assistance, please use the chat facility within your console, and there's also a questions panel there. Please submit your questions and we will cover those at the end of the webinar. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass you over to James Fowle, who is our Senior Sales Engineering Manager at Axceler, and he will be giving you an introduction to the company.
Okay, thanks, Jules. It's good. This is a quick slide for me, just to really introduce Axceler. I'm going to be firstly passing over to Simon to get into what PointBeyond do and the example solution, and then I'll be coming back at the end to go through specifically how Axceler helps around this. Just to give you firstly the background on us as an organisation, so we're a global software company. I'm personally based out of London, which is our EMEA headquarters. Corporate headquarters is over in the United States, and we've been around for many years, mid-90s, that's when we were first established, and we've been specialising in developing products and solutions for the management of collaborative environments. We are the leader in SharePoint management and migration. That's what we specialise in currently, and that's really what I'm going to be focusing on at the end of this session, talking a little bit about a couple of our products. Firstly, Control Point for the management of the SharePoint platform, and focusing on how we can build that into things like extranets to ensure content is secure, and etc. And our other solution that I'm going to be talking of today is the DaVinci Migrator. So this is actually helping you move content across different versions, and I'll be talking a bit about what's coming for 2013 as well. As an organisation, we have over 2,500 companies now that rely on our products, and probably 95% of that is all around SharePoint management and migration. As I said, I'm going to be coming back at the end of this just to get into detail about what we do, but at this point I'm going to hand across to Simon, and he will take you through, firstly, an introduction to PointBeyond. Over to you, Simon.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, James. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for coming on. Yeah, my name is Simon Wright, and I'm a managing consultant at PointBeyond, dealing mostly with our partner technologies. And PointBeyond themselves are the UK's leading SharePoint business application specialist, really concentrating as much as we can, really, on delivering those applications in SharePoint, using SharePoint out of the box and also partner tools. We are a Microsoft Gold partner with 6 competencies, Gold in project and portfolio management, and we work very closely with Axceler and other partners such as Nintex to deliver those business applications for our customers. So let's have a little look. I thought, first of all, it might be useful to kind of summarize a number of the pain points that we see quite regularly when we're out working with our customers and helping them deliver business applications. And so I guess the first one, which we see an awful lot, is where processes are not consistently repeatable. So where we're delivering process-driven applications and where they don't exist before, a lot of pain around people using unstructured ways of managing those processes, perhaps using email, Excel, that kind of stuff. And that presents a real challenge in terms of management information and reporting and control, because all of the information that goes into delivering that process is scattered all over the place. Secondly, I suppose another common one is that coding is quite often a starting point. Not to say there's anything wrong with coding, but it has its place, of course. But in lieu of any other sort of tools that would be able to deliver the applications that our customers are trying to achieve, coding, especially where there is a development department within the organization, are quite often the starting point. Can lead to some challenges, especially around embarking on lengthy coding projects, so not really delivering any return on investment or any benefit to the end users until the end of that development cycle before some functionality is released. And also, quite often it's a kind of a haphazard approach to delivering applications, so no real strategy as to how we as an organization are going to deliver applications to our end users. And the final thing we see an awful lot is where management, governance, and all that kind of planning is left as an afterthought, purely because the focus is quite often on delivering the application and not how we're going to make that application, have a long shelf life and deliver to the business over time. So things like information architecture and governance planning and tools that enable you to manage your content, who has access to that content, and report on how your content is growing and who's using what, can really deliver tangible return on investment later down the line. And we see these things being quite regularly left to last, really. So in terms of approaches for delivering business applications, well, these are the sort of things that companies are presented with when they look at a particular piece of functionality that they want to deliver within their organization. So as I mentioned before, coding your own is one option, and for certain scenarios it's a very valid option. But as I said before, it can be quite expensive, it can be risky, and it can be hard to support and maintain, especially where perhaps things aren't documented so well, or tweaks are made at a later date that are very hard to unpick. Buying a product off the shelf is another option, and again, off-the-shelf products have their place, but certainly they can be quite expensive to deliver what is ostensibly one piece of functionality that probably won't integrate too well with other areas of your other line of business systems within your organization. It does what it does. So, I mean, obviously it's fairly, a bit of an obvious statement, but it will do what it does. It won't do other things, and it may not entirely meet your needs. And this is where we see this idea of vendor lock-in quite regularly. So it does 80%, and we know another organization that uses it, but we want to use it slightly differently. And then you get tied into asking that vendor to do lengthy and costly developments and customizations for your organization on that product. And the third option, and this is the option we're going to concentrate a lot today really, is looking at off-the-shelf tools that you can create solutions yourself within your organization. So those tools that are highly configurable, they're easy to support and maintain. It's quite easy to find people with the skills to be able to configure and to own those applications once they've been built and developed. It can be quite inexpensive, and a lot of the functionality that you create within one business application you may well find can be reused in other areas of the business. And that's especially so when we're talking about things like document control and transmittals and publishing of content, and we'll see some of that in the demo very soon. Okay, so today's example, and it really is an example solution, it's a fictitious example, but it's based on a solution that we built for an engineering consultant a little while ago. And these are some of their requirements that they had, really around trying to control communications around their projects with customers and partners. Now that's not to say this is an industry-specific solution that only engineering specialists would find useful. Of course it's not. It's quite a universal subject really, about communicating with customers, partners, perhaps suppliers, marketing materials out to suppliers around your products, all that kind of stuff. And the example we'll see today will be around how you control those communications and then track them. And another point to emphasize here that this is an approach to document management control. It's not to say that this is going to work exactly for your organization. It really is an example. So your organization might have very different requirements. The beauty of this approach, using tools like Axceler and Nintex and SharePoint, is more familiarity in terms of the SharePoint element perhaps, but also you can reuse this approach to delivering solutions right across your organization. So looking at this off-the-shelf, customizable sort of platforming approach, you can quite easily and quickly deliver business solutions across the whole organization. So Important things for the particular client we delivered for, they were after a client-facing extranet. They wanted to control the creation of information within their organization on their intranet, and then publish that out with the correct controls and gateways to their customers, so that the customer always had the right version of the document. And this is particularly important for the example that we're using here, because for an engineering company building huge plants at mine heads, a mistake on a technical drawing or somebody using an out-of-date drawing can lead to sort of multi-million-pound mistakes being made, quite simply. And really that's what, in the title, before someone asks, and I'm sure they will towards the end, what the claims element of the title of this webinar is all about. It really was focusing on that kind of stuff. So let's look at the options that they considered. And again, some of these we've covered just now. So SharePoint Designer Workflows, they already had SharePoint, and so obviously, quite rightly, they considered SharePoint Designer Workflow. I think it became quite apparent that it was some of the requirements around sort of gateways and looping of workflow are far too complicated really to be delivered using SharePoint Designer Workflow, so that was disregarded quite early on. Off-the-shelf solutions were considered, but actually when they did the maths and did the weighing up, it turned out that best-of-breed configurable tools was actually more cost-effective than buying an expensive off-the-shelf tool that really only delivered one particular aspect of functionality that they were after. Now, I don't know if this was perhaps something to do with their engineering mindset, but they certainly got Nintex and Axceler tools very quickly. They were very comfortable quite early on building their own workflows using Nintex and working with the solution that we built for them, enhancing it and changing it and tweaking it as their solutions matured and their processes matured. Another thing that gave them a lot of confidence was bearing in mind, at the back of their minds, tools like DaVinci from Axceler, where you can quite easily and quite quickly migrate content from SharePoint, but also Nintex workflows to other SharePoint environments, and specifically to SharePoint 13, and they were very conscious that was going to be coming out in the near future, and they would want to move across to that. So it gave them lots of flexibility and confidence that the work that they were putting in now to their application didn't have to be reworked and redone when it came to moving to a newer version of SharePoint. So as I say, these are the approaches that they considered. It became pretty obvious early on that Nintex and Axceler were going to be the ones that would fit best for their organization. So in terms of the approach we used to deliver the application, well, as I said, we used Nintex and Nintex Workflow 2010 specifically. They already had SharePoint 2010. They looked at Axceler control points so that they could do all of the management around permissions and reporting and all the other good things, and I'm sure James will talk a lot more about those once after the demo. Another real advantage of using tools like Nintex is that you can take a very agile approach. So it isn't a case that you start a piece of work and you run a very lengthy project to develop the application and the workflows that comprise that application and then deliver it. You can take an agile approach, you can take a modular approach, and this really, we engaged an awful lot with the end users and with the client and developed the application collaboratively. So we could build some functionality, test it out, see how it looked and felt, go back in and tweak it, and use that circular approach to delivering something that was very business focused. So I don't know about you guys on the webinar and watching this, but I find diagrams very easy to sort of understand what it is that we're going to look at. So there's a couple of slides here just to show what it is I'm going to demonstrate, and then we'll move on to what we're going to see in the demo and actually see something live. So the example we're going to see, there will be a controlled document library, and this is really the starting point for content being created within this project site. It's a controlled document library where content can be uploaded or created and worked on internally, and then an approval workflow takes place so that content can then be used in this idea of transmittals. And I suppose it's worth me just explaining to you what a transmittal is. It's quite an engineering term, but it's just a bundle of documents that are then sent to a customer or to a client or a project team. So again, a very universal idea of communicating. So yeah, once the item has been approved, it can then be considered a document that can be transmitted, and it will show in a pick list so that people working on the project can select a number of documents, bundle them together, and then send them on to the customer for approval and agreement. So this is the second half of the process. So this is where you pick through in the transmittal pick list. You pick through the documents that you want to send, you would build your communication, you would send that communication off for approval, and then that, once approved, assuming that the communication is fine to go out, it will then be sent across to the customer via email and content uploaded to the customer extranet. So these are the areas we're going to have a look at in the demonstration. Quite a lot of information there, but we've got things around document tracking and creating those document bundles. Also, we'll look at the different approval ideas here, and it's worth noting that these are the approvals that they wanted in their organization. So it's not to say that your approval process will be exactly the same, and it's worth saying that all of these approval processes and the number of approvals and the people involved can be very, very flexible. Automated publishing to the extranet is obviously a very key feature, and then automating the email generation that the customer will see. So, to avoid death by PowerPoint, let's flip over to the demonstration now. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a very vanilla SharePoint site. For those of you that have used and seen SharePoint before, this will seem very familiar to you. This is the sort of thing you'll have used before, quite deliberately out of the box, because I want to show you where some of the tools come into play. So the idea here, we have a project site that we're working on as a team, and you see down the left-hand side, we've got a number of document libraries and lists. What we also have is, if we just skip over here, yes, okay, bear with me 1 second. I had a little problem with our South Coast data center earlier today where our connection kept dropping, so let me just reconnect to that and crack back on with that demonstration. Bear with me while we reconnect to that machine. Here we go. Right, apologies for that. Okay, and then the other element of the demonstration is this idea of a partner extranet, which we can see here. And we'll look at this in a little more detail in a second. So let's go back to our project site, and let's start to look at some of the collateral we have down the side. So, as we saw in that diagram in the presentation, the first item really here is this idea of a controlled document library. A little while to catch up with me. Okay, when that comes up, what we're going to see is a document library with a number of documents in there that maybe are already approved to feature as part of our transmittal, or things that are waiting for approval. And here we go. And something that can be approved. So this is really the starting point, and quite an important point really, because there's a number of features here that can help you control how you communicate with your customers and also control really how the output looks. So as you can see here, we've got a number of templated documents, and obviously these are very specific to that particular organization that we delivered for. But you can use templated documents to enforce your corporate brand, or perhaps you have a specific report format that you want all of your projects or marketing material to show as. This is a way of controlling that. And you can see we've got a lot of documents here that have gone through an approval process, and we've got a lot of information here about who's approved them and any comments that they may have made. Obviously, this is for demonstration purposes. You probably wouldn't have all of this metadata showing, but and we also see another document here that we don't have a lot of metadata around, and this is because it hasn't been approved. So let's just have a look how that approval might work. One nice thing about Nintex is that we can kick off the approval process from the contextual menus within SharePoint, so very, very seamless for end users to use. Let's start that approval process. Now, This is a demonstration, of course, so all of these approvers are going to be me so that I can show you how this may work. Obviously, in the real world, this won't be all one person, or maybe it will. And certainly, it might not be exactly right for your organization, but just to reiterate the point that this is very flexible. You could just have one approval or a number. And you can see on the at the bottom here another nice feature of Nintex, and this really is a representation of how people will build workflows in organizations using tools like Nintex. It's very drag and drop, and you can see it's very linear. It's very easy for people to see what's going on within a process. So this is how our approval process will look. We've got 3 approvers here, a document checker, then we have a document approver, and then we have the document controller who kind of oversees all of the control of the content. And not until all 3 of those approvals have taken place will that workflow end and will that document be available to transmit. So let's just put another note in here. And we'll kick that off. So it's going to do a number of things. So it's going to start the workflow that we just saw on the canvas there, and it's going to send off an approval email request, and it's going to come to me because I'm the approver for the purposes of the demo. It's also going to add a task to a task list, and Nintex comes with a really nice set of SharePoint web parts which you can use to track your current tasks, outstanding tasks, and they can just be dropped onto home pages for project sites or my sites or whatever it is that you may be using, so that you can track all the tasks that you're part of across all of the workflows running. So you can see here, we've got an approval coming through. It tells me what the document is that I'm approving. All of these emails are customizable. This is an out-of-the-box one just to show you the very basic functionality. But if I click through to here, I could approve that document. Put a comment, an uninspiring comment. Click on approve. And that will move the workflow on to the second stage. And at some point shortly, I'll probably get another email through. But I won't make you sit through me approving 3 things. So once the document's approved, what happens next? Well, 2 things really. First of all, it adds it to the document history library, which is a place that's going to track, here we go. This is the second email come through for approval. So the document history library is a place that's going to track all of the documents that are approved and any transmittals and activities that have happened on them, and we can see that here. And we'll see that coming into play shortly. It's also going to add the item to the transmittal pick list so that we can then use it to build our sort of document bundles and send those off to our customers. So let's select a few documents that we want to send and transmit over to our partners. Let's just take those 3. And let's look at how we build a transmittal. So really the last element here is this idea of a transmittal register. This is something that was very, very important for the customer that we delivered. It might be that you have a different way in which you want to put together this, these sort of these client communications, but you know the functionality is pretty universal, I think. So let's add a new item, and we can see that those 3 items that I selected earlier are now here available for me to see. So it's very clear to me what it is that I'm about to transmit to our customers. So let's put in some information about who it's going, who we're going to CC, who it's coming from. And again, I'm going to use all one user just so that it's very easy for me to demonstrate to you. In your scenario, you'd probably find you'd have a lot of different people get involved in this process. Let's type in a little a message, and it's worth noting that this message will form part of the body of the email that will go out to the client. And we'll save this. And that's going to do a number of things. So first of all, it's going to be building that transmittal and pulling through those items that we've selected to be transmitted. It's also going to start off an approval workflow because, as I said earlier and we saw in the diagram, every time a new bundle of information is ready for transmitting to one of our clients, it has to be approved. And again, this can all be customized to your approval process within your organization. So let's just have a little look at what comes through. Fantastic. So what we can see here is a nicely formatted email, and this is representative of what's going to go out to the customer in this example solution. So we can see that the following item needs approval. And we can see that we have like a transmittal or a communication number here. We've got the choice here to click through to approve or reject, as we saw before with the other document approval. And you can see we've got a lot of information here. And this is a nice HTML email that you can format in any way that fits your business. And it's quite a useful way, again, it's almost extending that idea of a template, using templated documents. You can have a template for your email communications with customers as well. So it helps you reinforce that corporate brand. So yeah, we've got a lot of information here about the project title, the company who it's from, who sent it. If we go down to the bottom, we'll see that we've got our the message that we put in there earlier. It will go out to our client, our partners, and we also see the documents that we selected. Linked there rather than attached, which is another useful feature in that you're not sending out large documents, and this really can get you around some of the restrictions you may have in your organization about emailing large documents, and this is certainly a challenge when we were working with this class of customer. They send out very, very large plans, and they're very keen on not emailing those, so this is a good way of avoiding that. So I've got a couple of options here. One option is that I could just reply to this and say approve, using this really nice idea that Nintex have around lazy approvals. So simply replying to the email will kick the workflow off and move it on to the next stage. Or I can click here and we can see that familiar approve or reject form. So let's type in our approval, we'll kick that off. And that transmittal is now approved. So let's give that a little minute just to catch up with my clicks. Here we go. And this is our customer email, and it looked very similar to what we saw just now in the approval, with all of that good information in, and with that original message going out to the customer, the partner, and whatever. So it's also done a number of other things as well. Let's go back to our transmittal register, give that a little bit of a refresh. So it's automatically numbered, that transmittal, so that it's a reference that you can use, and it's a unique reference that's universal for every communication with the customer that gets sent out. You know who it's come from and anyone that's CC'd in. You know the content of that transmittal here. And what that will also have done is update our document history library. And if we see here, yes, we've got DGM DTN 00172, and that's appearing on 3 items. So we're building up a history or a picture of the content that we're sending out to our customers, and the transmittal numbers that they were involved in. And of course, last in the piece, and probably the most important, we flip back over to our Customer Extranet. Perhaps it's an extranet we're using to work on a project with this company, Dorset Exploration Inc. We'll click into this document library here, and we can see that, yep, there are a number of documents here that are stamped with the 172 transmittal number. And interestingly here, we have version control running on this document library. Obviously, for those of you that used SharePoint before, probably quite aware of version history in document libraries. But it's moved this document onto version 4. And again, a really, really important bit of functionality for the client that we were working with. It's important that they could communicate the right diagrams and charts and reports to the people out there in the field building these large minehead plants, so that expensive mistakes weren't made. If we look at the version history on this particular item, do this here, fantastic. So we can see when the first one was created, and we can see that it was on transmittal numbered 179, and you can see as we move through how the next transmittal number is added, and so on and so on. So it builds up a picture for you and also for the customer about how you're communicating with them, which is the latest version of documents. And remember, all of this is done in a controlled and seamless way without emailing large items over the web, using via email, sending things out to Hotmail or other webmail-based systems, all of it within your control on a managed and structured extranet that you're holding. Let's go and have a look at a little more information that we can capture using Nintex. So let's look at the workflow that ran for this. And again, this is the sort of canvas drag and drop approach that is very very user friendly with an Intex tool. And we can see that we've got all of these areas of green, which means that we've gone through the approval and process, which we already know. Had we got stuck, say, at a specific approval, perhaps this request approval stage here that I'm hovering over now, this would appear as yellow because we're waiting for that approval. It's a really useful graphical way to show people who are working with a number of workflows what stage things are at. So if this is my transmittal, I'd go on to who's needed to approve that and say, what's going on? Can you approve my transmittal? It needs to go out today. There's also an awful lot more information that's captured by the tool in the background, and you can see some of this is quite overwhelming actually. Very, very useful though when you're trying to do an audit trail or find out what's going on within a particular transmittal. And another nice idea within Intex is the idea to be able to build up in this history list an idea of what's happened within the transmittal. So very useful for when building workflows, for when troubleshooting them, for when augmenting them or making them more complex, but also just to communicate and track information on that particular workflow so that it's very clear what happened at what stage and who did what. Okay, so that really concludes our demonstration. So let's just flip back to the presentation and have a little look. Maybe we'll go to the current slide. And we'll have a little look at some of the benefits that we just saw. I suppose the subheading here, improve accuracy and control, is the real biggie. As I was saying earlier when I was setting the scene, there's a lot of organizations that have a lot of processes that are managed in a very unstructured way. It can be very hard to remove bottlenecks. We don't know where our processes are going slow. We just know that it takes 2 weeks usually to get this stuff done. It's also a very good way of moving away from using paper-based systems, so not getting wet signatures on things, not losing bits of paper in internal posts. It helps improve accuracy. Workflows control the process, not people. And it enforces your consistency or any corporate standards you might have. And it also helps with compliance. So the example that we delivered for the particular engineering company, it helped towards their ISO 9001 compliance because they were showing rigor around their document management processes. It automatically applies those rules and it makes the document control and audit very transparent, especially when we start looking at tools from Axceler as well. A few more benefits here. Everything you saw today had absolutely no custom code. Very easy to adapt and enhance, as you saw with the drag and drop process. If there was a particular approval that needed to be extended or perhaps pared back, simply a question of going into that designer and changing around some of those items on the canvas. Very quick to reuse some of those tools in other areas. So perhaps you have that similar workflow process for approval somewhere else. Just pick that workflow up and use it on a different SharePoint site. The work's already done there for you. And finally, I guess, reporting and control. So looking at tools like Control Point so that you can make sure that your customers are seeing the right content and they have access to the right content. And then that future-proofing, so you're not having to think about what are we going to do when we come to SharePoint 2013, how easy is it going to be to migrate those workflows. Well, with tools like DaVinci, very simple to pick up and migrate those across. So I think I'm going to pass over to James now. He's going to give us a little bit more in-depth about Axceler. He is, after all, the expert on the product. So James, if I can hand over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Simon. So yeah, I'm going to be really explaining how Axceler kind of fits into this and how we help you when you're building these kind of business solutions, such as the one that Simon's just kind of given you there. How we really help to make sure that these solutions that you build are secure and future-proofing, as you mentioned there. So we try and shift it to the next slide. So the first solution I'm going to talk about is Control Point, which is our leading SharePoint governance and management product. There's really 3 core strands to this, which we have, firstly, governance, which is all about making sure that the deployment itself is all set up correctly, configured correctly, make sure that all the sites are configured correctly. If you are tracking things like version history across SharePoint document libraries, that's all kind of automatically configured. So there's a lot of automation around the administration and governance that we can put into SharePoint, which essentially will help you to reduce the total cost of the ownership. Really help to simplify the whole management of the platform. The second area is greater insights. This is all the management reports that we can deliver. So when you're rolling out solutions, you can actually see who's firstly using them, track the adoption of the solutions, so see what areas of the SharePoint deployment are being used, which ones aren't being used. So you can actually focus and react to that, maybe push and enhance the adoption of the things that you're building within SharePoint. And then finally, this is where we're getting into more maybe business critical applications where you're putting in real key content into SharePoint. You need to make sure that the right eyes are seeing that content, make sure there's no costly security breaches, help with the day-to-day permissions management across the SharePoint platform. And that's really where Control Point kind of comes into that aspect. So just to expand a little bit on each of those topics. So firstly, around governance. So this is hopefully customers that come to us, they're in the early stages of their SharePoint deployment. And we can really help them to start that journey off on the right foot during that kind of initial deployment phase. So this is about kind of standardizing the configuration, making sure that you've got a consistent look and feel across your SharePoint sites, managing and controlling the growth across the environment. Because as one of the greatest strengths of SharePoint is that it is very easy to deploy. You can delegate all the management down to business users. Here's your site collection. Here you go. You can control it. You can manage it. But that has some kind of negatives associated with that. So in effect, the greatest strength of SharePoint is also its weakness. So that ease of deployment has these challenges. So what we do is Control Point is we build in features such as policy enforcement. So make sure that your users are only doing what you really want them to do. So if you don't want them creating hundreds of sites, put in controls to do that. So you can kind of create sites, give them admin rights, but just rein in some of the standard functions that they would otherwise get with SharePoint natively. Better insight into kind of what users are doing within the platform. So this is where we're kind of getting into the auditing aspects, so monitoring and alerting on the changes that happen around site configurations. So if you want to know all the enterprise features that are switched on across the platform, we can give you that kind of information. Which kind of leads on to the second point, the greater insight. So it's about delivering these management reports for SharePoint. So as you expand the usage of SharePoint across the organization, you as kind of the management team can actually get statistics, get information about what is actually being used, what's not used, which maybe is more important, so you can focus on that, track the adoption, and hopefully boost the value of SharePoint. If you're investing a lot of money in SharePoint, you want to make sure that the business is getting value from that. So what we've done with Control Point is we've built over 60 different reports in the product. The reports will give insights to different audiences across the organization. So people like the infrastructure team, they're going to be interested in monitoring growth, storage growth, monitoring content databases, all the storage aspects. Business users may be looking at the actual usage of sites. So if you're delivering a solution in SharePoint, you need to make sure that people are accessing that, and if they're not, how do we kind of resolve that? Other configurational reports, such as looking to see where certain web parts are being used, what workflows are actually configured across the platform. So as you roll out all these different solutions, we can kind of collate all of that, show you where all the workflows are configured, where they're running, where they may be stalling. So you've got processes that are breaking down. We can kind of pull that into central management reports. There's a lot of information there that will really help you to monitor how SharePoint is being used. And the third area we were talking about is getting into the security. So this is really for where SharePoint is extending into broad adoption. You're building business solutions, maybe delivering content through extranets to your partners and customers. That's why we need to ensure that all that content is secure. So with this, we'll ensure that you have the reports, the information to show you exactly who has access to what within SharePoint, which natively it's sometimes difficult to get that information out, simply because there's so many different ways people could be granted rights, whether it's directly, whether it's through SharePoint groups, whether it's through Active Directory groups, whether it's through claims-based authentication, forms-based, etc., etc. So we can collect all this information and just deliver that to the people that need to know and need to check that users have the correct rights across SharePoint. We at Axceler do a lot of work within kind of financial sector, pharmaceutical sector, where compliance is key. They need to ensure real critical industry regulations that people are only able to see the content that they want. So we do a lot of work in those kind of sectors looking at kind of the security aspects. We also do as well as the kind of the analysis, also the actual management of permissions, so you can actually help the people who are responsible for doing the day-to-day, adding users, deleting users, reassigning users, etc. Also, if you've been using SharePoint a while, kind of cleaning up permissions, making sure that you don't have too many unique rights on individual sites or libraries or even down to item level, help you kind of monitor all of that. So Control Point is a mature, rich product just for ensuring that your SharePoint deployment is kind of configured and being used as you want it. The second solution I wanted to talk about was the DaVinci Migrator. So this is all about moving content onto newer versions of SharePoint. We've recently released the beta for the 2013 beta. So you can actually use this right now to maybe migrate content across into SharePoint 2013. But as soon as the RTM is out early next year, DaVinci will also help support the migrations onto the 2013 platform. And we take a different approach to the standard methodology that is often advised, which is unattaching and reattaching SharePoint content databases. We help to break down migrations into a more granular level. We have a concept that we call discover, plan, and migrate. So the discovery is key to just help you identify what things are maybe not going to migrate as you expect when you're moving forward with SharePoint. There may be certain web parts, certain solutions that you built that are not going to work on the new platform. So we'll help you kind of find them, understand what's there, and you can make decisions about what to do with that. Whether do you need them? If not, we'll just leave them behind so you can apply some filtering on that. So we allow customers to query their current SharePoint environments, get a lot of information out, and using that information, you can really plan and segment the migration. So you're not restricted here to moving content database by content databases. You can break this down into what makes sense for your business, whether it's moving sub-site by sub-site or batching certain sites together, taking a whole load of likewise site collections and batching those up to migrate them across a certain weekend. You can build these kind of schedules to what makes sense within your particular environment. Also filtering as well, so gives you kind of control about what to take. So you don't have to take everything as you would with just moving a whole database. So there may be certain sites, certain configurations, certain web parts, certain workflows that you're not going to need to migrate across. So you can apply filters to do that. One really popular example is things like version history. Often you find that SharePoint environments contain huge amounts of version history that users just don't need. So you can apply filters to say, right, we'll take the latest versions or the latest version of each document and the previous 5 versions. Anything beyond that, all the historical data, the users have said they don't need, so let's kind of leave that behind. So it really helps you to kind of filter out and just take exactly what you need across into the later versions. So finally, the migrate phase. This is really about helping move the content. We support the concept of iterative migrations. So it's not just a big bang approach. You can migrate one weekend, still have users accessing the current portal, uploading content, modifying content, and you can do repeated migrations just to move across the deltas. So things that have been modified, we'll take them across with future runs. And going back to what we were discussing with the example solution, we are an Intex partner ourselves at Axceler, so we do work with them to make sure that any Intex workflows that are built, we can move those across. Also standard out of the box and SharePoint Designer workflows, okay, we can support the migration of those. So it's about ensuring that if you are building these solutions, they are future-proofed and you can move them across along with your journey through SharePoint versions. So that's my part completed. Simon, if you'd like to just summarize, and then what we'll do is then open up the floor to any questions and answers. As Jules said at the beginning, there's a section on the right-hand side to enter any questions. We'll pick them up, I'll relay them, and then myself or Simon can answer them.
Sounds good. Thanks, James. Yeah, so I thought it'd be useful just to have a little summary of what we've seen today. So first of all, I guess that decision, code, buy, or configure, and it'll certain times a scenario that we write in one organization to code, other times not. But I think point two, this idea of using tools to quickly configure your solution, so build something, get it out there, get some user feedback, and then rework it, tweak it, or let it adapt as your processes adapt and get more mature. And then that last bit there, which I think the tools that Axceler deliver are really, really key to delivering this. But one eye on control and the other on the future. So the ability to migrate stuff using DaVinci and the fact that you know that everything that you are building now is going to be future-proof when later versions come along with tools like that, really, really powerful indeed. So that concludes the webinar. Thank you very much all for attending. I'm hoping we're going to have a few questions.
Yeah, if anyone does have to jump off, then you've got our contact details there. Feel free to send us an email. We can follow up afterwards. I also had one question early on. Someone was struggling with the audio. I think their connection was dropping. I think there's a problem at their end. They're asking if the webinar is going to be recorded and available. So what we do is we'll send you a follow-up email after this is completed, and in there there'll be a link to watch the recorded version as well. Okay, so leading on to other questions that we have. So one for you here, Simon, I think. How much of this functionality is actually reusable?
Well, nearly all of it, to be honest. I mean, certainly the workflows, and Intech gives you lots of options around reusing workflow, so having a workflow that's available across a whole site collection, or reusing document library specific ones. Yeah, it's very good for that. And the example that we saw there, and I suppose we didn't touch on that too much, was the whole point for that particular customer was that they wanted the ability to replicate that functionality across multiple project sites. So as a new project came on board, they wanted to be able to spin up a new SharePoint site to manage that project, and they wanted all of those same controls and Intech workflows in that same site as across all the others. But as you can see, as you start to build that out to 10, 20, 100 project sites, it can be quite difficult to maintain control across all that. So that's where Axceler tools come in as well.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay, the next one. Does a client have to have an Intech in order to participate with workflows, specifically the external approval process?
Okay, no, in short. And there are a number of options in the way they can interact. As we saw earlier, they can simply reply to the email using this lazy approval process and just saying approved or declined or whatever the options are for that particular workflow. And that will then be handled server-side by an Intech software. So no, they don't.
Okay. Okay. Can it be configured to stamp revision numbers on documents?
Yeah, it can. And I think we saw a little bit of that there. But, again, that was an example of sort of a fictitious numbering stamping that we were doing for the demonstration purposes. Your organization will have very different ways in which you want to manage your documents and stamp them with numbering, but a lot of that is very flexible. You can build those strings quite easily on the fly when you're working with the workflows. Yeah.
I've just got another one popped in about, is the presentation available for download? I believe I'll check with that. If it's not included on the email, then I'll follow up with you directly. We can send across the slide deck as well to you. So I'll make a note of that, and I'll check on the email that goes out, and if it's not included, I'll send it to you directly.
Sounds good.
Another one here. How easy is it to integrate this sort of solution with existing line of business systems?
Okay. Well, it's certainly quite easy to pull content into SharePoint from other line of business systems using migration tools. I mean, you can integrate it with other line of business systems. There may be a little bit of custom code required in order to push stuff to various places. A lot of it depends on the line of business system, but yeah.
Okay, I think I've got one final one here. Does it generate receive notification on behalf of the client?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, something we didn't see in the demonstration, but there are a number of ways in which you can get confirmation that the client's seen that. So, in the example that of the solution that we delivered for the particular client, they needed everything that got sent over for the client to notify the company that they received it and they agreed it and it was approved, because then it meant that both sides contractually were working on the right plans, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, there are a number of different ways in which you could do that, and happily discuss with anyone their specific requirements, because every organisation wants to work differently. But yeah.
Okay, I think that is everything. We're running towards the end of the hour, so I shall leave it there unless there's any further questions, which it doesn't look like there is. As Simon said, thanks for joining us. If you do have any questions either for myself or Simon, feel free to contact us. Both our websites are there as well. Lots more information that you can get from the website, lots of downloads, etc. So feel free to go there. But thanks, Simon, once again, and thank everyone for joining, and we'll hopefully speak to you again soon. Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.
Brilliant.